Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. We have a motherload of documents in the James Comey case that we're going to dig into today, including 14 exhibits that are all going to explain very clearly what a corrupt piece of garbage James Comey actually is. And we're excited to get into it. Of course, quick preview, then we'll zoom in for further detail. But we've got the mind map here where we're assembling all of the various components of this case. We know that this judge is a Biden appointee, and we're racing through the case with now a response from Lindsay Halligan, which is in response to James Comey's motion to dismiss the indictment, saying that Lindsay Halligan is selectively and vindictively prosecuting the former FBI director. But this just dropped last night. You can see 14 exhibits and a big, juicy response that we're going to go through in detail so that we have this on the record for all posterity. Now then, we've got Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3, Exhibit emails. We've got more emails. Big night, New York Times emails to Richmond. Reinhold Niebuhr, which is James Comey's fake pseudonym, his name. We've got Exhibit 7, more emails. 8, 9, 10. We got text messages, more government reports, and the list just goes on and on and on, including this very damning note where we see Comey wrote in handwriting that HRC, this is her plan that he's adopting into his own. So bunch of stuff here. I got all the clips queued up that are relevant. Ted Cruz, we got Comey and Grassley and Lindsey Graham, who all dug into this when Comey was actually the FBI director. And the amazing clip here, about 4 minutes, from President Trump at the end of the show, at the end of this whole entire segment, where Trump just unloads, man, when he was on with 60 Minutes. And so we'll get into it all and process accordingly this massive conspiracy, of which James Comey was just one little sliver, just one little part of. And so we're excited to get into it. Now, we want to say thank you for being here. If you haven't subscribed to our channel already, thank you for doing that so that we never miss you again when we are here live. We're very grateful to have you. We had a beautiful members only stream this morning. Lots of election stuff talking out there today. And so we're just going to, kind of defer that to tomorrow, see what the results are. And we'll have an after party today after the show. So if you're a membo, stick around and we'll see you as soon as the show's over. Just hang tight and we'll automatically be back and we'll get into it. All right. So now, without any further ado, let's get into it. Here is what we've got. The James Comey case now hitting the jackpot. We see that Lindsay Halligan submitted this 48-page response to James Comey's attempt to dismiss the criminal prosecution against him for lying to Congress and for obstructing Congress with his repeated lies right to their faces. And so what he did is he said, Lindsay Halligan is a Trump appointee, and she's been appointed to just come and attack me. And there's no evidence of this. And I am being selectively prosecuted, which means that you're just singling him out and no other people are being treated the same. Okay. He's being treated like one of these things is not like the others. And it's vindictive. So it's Lindsay Halligan who's targeting him because she's got malice in her heart. And we'll go through this, but what is also enjoyable is that there were 14 exhibits attached to this puppy. We're going to go through all of them, and they are damning. We've got a big one that is being referenced and shared about, and we'll see how it fits into the context. But James Comey's handwriting in a memo from September 2016 about how this was all Hillary Clinton's plan to try to tie Trump to Russia, and then incorporated it into what became Crossfire Hurricane and this entire investigation into the president that was all made up thanks to Obama, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, and the rest of the criminals. So we've got all of that to get into. And as a reminder, we have, this is basically where we're at. So we've got James Comey here. His defense attorney, as a reminder, is Patrick Fitzgerald. We know who James Comey is. We've covered a lot of his stuff here on the channel. The judge is named Michael S. Nachmanoff. He's a Biden appointee, pretty new judge, just got there in 2021. We've got a trial date, which will probably get moved, but that's currently scheduled for January 5th, 2026. We know that one of the key figures in this whole story is Daniel Richman, Columbia law professor and a liaison to James Comey, who is going to be all over these documents. So I just wanted to put a name to a face. We know that he had a whole bio on his Columbia Law website saying that he worked specifically for James Comey. And in fact, here, let me just share that with you right now so you can see it. In his bio over here from Columbia Law, Richmond served as an advisor to FBI Director James Comey and as a consultant to the DOJ. And he's all over the place, still over there at Columbia as full-time faculty. And so we'll be refreshing our recollection on who he is specifically. But we've got all of these other segments where Grassley, Graham, and Ted Cruz are digging in to James Comey when he was the director and hauled in front of Congress to answer questions. And some of these are old. So the statute of limitations has expired and others have not expired. So we've got kind of this pattern that we're establishing here to show that James Comey is in fact lying and obstructing Congress and was doing it in order to cover up for his crimes. The two charges we recall are 1, false statements within the jurisdiction of a legislative branch, lying to Congress, 2, obstructing a congressional proceeding. We know both of those are 5 years apiece, and we'll see if, Comey ultimately gets anything even close to that. But with that backdrop, now let's see what is happening. So this is what we got from Lindsay Halligan and their team down there in the Eastern District of Virginia, saying our response in opposition to James Comey. James Comey came out. He said, I'm being selectively and vindictively prosecuted. And you have to dismiss this case against me because I'm a victim. We're going to go through it starting now. We've got 48 pages of delicious goodness coming out of the Halligan team out there in Eastern Virginia. They write, all right, Judge and James, we are now here responding in opposition to Comey's motion to dismiss the indictment. For the reasons herein, this should be denied. This case should proceed to trial because this is neither vindictive nor selective, as all of these exhibits and our motion and our filings will show. Explaining, once we fast forward through the table of authorities and into the beginning of the document, they say, all right, Judge, listen. Defendant James Comey and his motion to dismiss the indictment based on selective and vindictive prosecution should be denied. Through a mix of news reports, social media posts, and speculation in his filing, Comey, he weaves a tale of what he calls, quote, glaring constitutional violations that resulted in his indictment for lying and obstructing Congress. Now, the Supreme Court, if somebody's going to ask for a case to be dismissed on this basis, they have imposed demanding standards, asking for a dismissal of this indictment for reasons that are forbidden by the Constitution. These claims ask the courts, to exercise judicial power over a special province of the executive and risk unnecessarily impairing the executive's duty. Prosecutors have to uphold the standards of the law. And if the courts just say, actually, that's vindictive, actually, that's selective, then you are usurping a major power. So you better have a damn good reason to do it. When the rigorous legal standard is applied here that has already been established in prior precedent, it's clear that James Comey failed to show that the Constitution requires the step of dismissing this case. He hasn't proven it at all. Now, here's why. The prosecution is not vindictive. Comey has not produced direct evidence of a vindictive motive at all. And he has not shown that the prosecutor pursued this case, quote, solely to punish him for his First Amendment rights. So he has not carried his heavy burden. He can't show it's vindictive. No direct evidence at all. And the prosecution is also not selective. And we're going to recreate all of the facts with all of these emails and handwritten notes as we continue, but she's fleshing it out. It's also not selective. Comey has not identified similarly situated people who were not prosecuted, and he's not provided any evidence that the decision to prosecute him was made because of anything that he's allowed to do, his protected activities. He has not produced the clear evidence that is required if you're going to dismiss this case. So, with that, they say a duly appointed and unbiased prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, clearly duly appointed and clearly unbiased, and a duly constituted grand jury of his peers, as they like to say, found probable cause that Comey committed these two offenses. The motion to dismiss should be denied, and the case should proceed to trial. Now we zoom in. All right, Judge. Let's begin all the way back in July 2015. Rewind the clock. Trump's not the president. We're not even in election year yet. The defendant, Comey, was the FBI director, and Hillary's going to be running and is now going to be the heir apparent of the Democrat Party. And this is when Comey came out with this stupid little report. Now, James Comey served as the director of the FBI from September 2013 until May 2017, when Trump won and fired him. In July, though, of 2015, okay, Trump's not in office yet, the FBI opened an investigation. They called this the mid-year exam. This was all about Hillary. Remember that? The mid-year exam was focused on Secretary Hillary's use of a private email server to conduct official government business. And they didn't raid her house and go through her drawers. Not at all. Nobody wanted to do that at the FBI. Like, are you sure? Like, yeah, actually, we're going to cancel the warrant. The primary crime under investigation was mishandling of classified information and failure to report the mishandling of the classified information, similar to what Trump got charged with. By the spring of 2016, James Comey, now the election's heating up, Comey and the mid-year team, quote, had determined that absent an unexpected development, evidence to support a criminal prosecution of Hillary was lacking. Oh, no. They couldn't find evidence to prosecute her because they wanted her to win the election. So the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, we've got reports here in the exhibits, they found that despite having conversations with the then Deputy Attorney General, so think of it like the old Todd Blanche or the old Lisa Monaco, regarding the joint announcement of a decision to decline the criminal prosecution, Comey began considering the possibility of an FBI-only public statement. Okay, so everybody's talking about this. OIG, now we've got FBI James Comey talking with the DOJ. Okay, FBI's under the DOJ, so he's kind of reporting to his superiors, saying, well, we're going to do a joint announcement to decline the criminal prosecution, and Obama's running cover for Hillary at this time. They began considering the possibility that maybe the FBI would just come out and the DOJ would just kind of stay behind the scenes. Now, the defendant, Comey, he stated that an FBI-only public statement, he said, was, quote, warranted by the 500-year flood in which the FBI found itself. And they're referencing the OIG report. Okay, so this is Exhibit 1, just to make sure we're going through all of these. You can see here is a 15-pager. This is a review of various actions by the FBI in advance of the election. And they said, yep, this is all about the mid-year exam. And so they're just quoting from it directly, right? This was a big OIG report. This is their executive summary of all of Comey and Clinton's scandalous cover-up attempts. And they're referencing that explicitly. They say, now, of note, the timing and the presumption that Clinton would eventually be the Democrat Party nominee was part of his decision-making process. As we know, he needed to come out, and they're going to explain it, but cover for her. Comey eventually, quote, made a conscious decision not to tell the DOJ leadership, his superiors, about his plans to make a separate statement because he was concerned that they would instruct him not to do it, which is probably true because, again, they were covering up for Hillary. Remember, then we had Loretta Lynch meet with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in an airport in Phoenix, Arizona for like 30 minutes. Don't know what they were doing on there. But then suddenly, yeah, we had no real prosecution of Hillary. And the cover-up continued. So now James Comey concealed his intentions from the DOJ about his decision to independently make a declination announcement. So he's now saying, oh, I'm not going to coordinate with the Biden DOJ. On July 5th, 2016, elections heating up. Now Comey, he came out and he made a public statement. You all remember this, in which he, quote, announced, well, the FBI has completed our mid-year investigation. He criticized Clinton and her senior aides, and he changed his memo, if you remember, from grossly negligent, the law. If Comey would have come out and said, actually, Hillary acted grossly negligent, then you would say, well, under the statute, that meets the criminal standard. She should be prosecuted, indicted immediately. But he didn't. He said, well, grossly negligent is kind of different. He just called it, remember this, extremely careless. Scam. In their handling of, no, she wasn't grossly negligent. She was extremely careless. What's the difference? Well, the words are different. Okay. So in their handling of classified information, stated that the FBI was recommending the declination of the prosecution of Hillary. Comey came out, no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute Hillary based on this because we love her. The OIG determined that Comey's decision, so an independent investigation, they found that Comey's decision to make this statement was the result of his belief that only he had the ability to credibly and authoritatively convey the rationale for why they were not going to prosecute Clinton, because he thinks like he has a lot of credibility or something, and that he needed to hold the press conference to protect the FBI and the DOJ from the extraordinary harm that would happen if he didn't do it. Now, Comey, in a footnote, they say he actually contacted DOJ leadership about his plans to make a public statement, but he did so only after the FBI notified the press. So he's like, hey, Obama DOJ, Loretta Lynch, hey, I'm going to go make an announcement about Hillary. Oh, when? 5 minutes. CNN setting up right now. Just so you know, now I've notified you. Walks out, delivers a statement. So as to make it, quote, impracticable for the DOJ leadership to prevent him from issuing the statement. Now, that behavior, the OIG said, was extraordinary and insubordinate. And he was trying to, I think, kind of, cover up for her in a way that ultimately backfired. They hated Comey. How dare you make that statement? If he would have notified the DOJ would have shut him up if they could have. And then it wouldn't have ever come out. And I think that may have rattled some people. They said, FBI came out, covered up for Hillary. Like, what a scam this is. She literally had an email server in her basement that all got hacked by somebody and it's all over the internet now. And they didn't go raid Bill Clinton's panty drawer, did they? No, but they did Melania's. Now, in just 2 months later, in September 2016, an unrelated investigation out of the FBI's New York field office. Now, this was it's getting closer to the election. We're in September from July. November's coming up, and we're going to be electing President Trump. Discovered potentially thousands of new emails relevant to the mid-year exam. Oops. He says, as a result, on October 28th, Comey sent a letter to the chairman of various congressional committees, like the election's right around the corner, regarding the newly discovered information and the possible relevance. Oh, remember when I said extremely careless? That was only like a fraction of the evidence, and we have a lot more. But now let me tell you, as the election's right around the corner. Now, congressional committees saying this is now relevant, he wrote that the FBI would take the appropriate steps to investigate this and determine whether these new emails contain any classified information and to see whether or not they were important to our investigation. And I don't know, they're not explaining much if the Congress was talking about these, right? Did we hear Congress people come out and say, oh my gosh, the FBI just sent us new memo saying that there's more emails out there? Maybe the Congress people told us, but we're not seeing it recounted here, and I can't recall. Now, the defendant's correspondence with Daniel Richman is subsection B, and his correspondence with the press all surrounded this little Hillary scam. Now, after Comey sent the October 16 letter, Comey emailed extensively with Daniel Richman, the guy from Colombia, who served as a special government employee all the way since 2015. In fact, in early 2015, while discussing opportunities at the FBI with FBI personnel, Richman represented that he, quote, regularly got contacted by journalists, particularly the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times, to explain things like, we need a law professor, or this guy's great. So he comes and he works with them. He says, so they often quote me. Now, obviously, I would not plan to say anything on or off the record about matters I work for on the Bureau. He sent that in an email in Exhibit 3. So let's pause and go over to this exhibit and see what's going on over here, which is that email. This goes from Daniel Charles Richman from the law school email address, Friday, January 2nd, 2015. Okay, ways out from the new election. Also copied James Baker on that, FBI General Counsel. Remember that? Also, somebody else, Patrick N. Finley, is getting the email. James Baker is the general counsel over there. He was the guy who met with Michael Sussman and then went to testify and really, couldn't do much to implicate him, but was the recipient of the Fusion GPS Steele dossier that came from Christopher Steele. It was funneled up through Perkins Coie into Michael Sussman's gigantic gullet. And then he went over to the FBI to try to regurgitate it into their mouths so that they could process it for the American people. So he now, Daniel Charles Richman, is sending an email. They're all like in, cahoots. Happy New Year to you too, says Daniel. On the particulars, he says, a consultant appointment sounds just fine. Yeah, I could consult for you guys. Sure. Now, I guess I would have to give up my dream titles of, oh my gosh, this guy, Super special assistant to the director. Oh, gosh. Or royal steward. Dude, as I told Jim Baker, I think we should keep remuneration to a minimum. In the fall, I will be, quote, on sabbatical, getting my full salary from Columbia. Nice. And while I hope to start being useful to the Bureau before then, I'm perfectly ready for the work to be pro bono. I don't need any money. Where money may come in for me, maybe for reimbursement of travel expenses if I'm going to DC a lot, but perhaps that matter can wait. Some things to flag on the ethics side. I regularly get contacted by journalists. Comey's like, oh, perfect. That's great. That's exactly why I need a leaker. Particularly the Times, the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times to explain things. And they often end up quoting me. Now, obviously, I would not plan to say anything on or off the record about matters I work for in the Bureau. The only issue I can think of is whether I can keep up my public profile as a Columbia academic. If possible, I'd like to continue doing this as it's good for the school and, in my humble opinion, makes criminal justice coverage slightly more accurate than it would otherwise be. Because he is out correcting the record. Yeah. Says, from time to time, I have been paid to provide legal advice about federal criminal cases. I'm not involved in anything right now, except for a lawyer who emails inquiries every month. So I spend about 15 minutes on that. But we should clarify what, if anything, I can continue to do. Now, on the clearance front, I suspect I don't have any active clearances. I left the SDNY, U.S. Attorney's Office, in 92. In the 90s, I worked as a consultant for Treasury as part of the Waco investigation and for the DOJ's OIG. In connection with my work, I did have a secret clearance for the report on the CIA-crack cocaine connection, or the lack of. Yeah, I'm sure. More recently, I consulted with the Interior Department Deepwater Horizon Inquiry, Bureau of Management, and I don't imagine that involved any heavy-duty clearances. So you guys will obviously be the best judges of what's needed, but my current dive into the going dark public literature has highlighted the level of secrecy that attends the government side of the debate. So I suspect that the higher my clearance, the more use I can be. I'd like high access. And that usefulness will hopefully transfer into other areas too. Looking forward to talking. Dan Richmond, Columbia law professor, aka super special assistant to the director. All right. So that is Exhibit 3. Now we continue on, and we have more emails that are coming out. And backing up, we did have Exhibit 2, which is a letter. And yeah, this is from James Comey. So remember when he sent this letter in to everybody, October 28th, we skipped over this exhibit, but this is the letter that was being referenced. And here's what they said to everybody. Okay, Ron Johnson, Shelby, Grassley, Burr, Nunez, and others. Jason Chaffetz says, hey, all right, here, Chairman. In my previous congressional testimony, I lied. I referred to the fact that the FBI had completed its investigation, and now I'm supplementing my previous testimony. In connection with an unrelated case, FBI's learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation, and I'm writing to inform you that the investigative team briefed me yesterday, and I agreed we should take investigative steps to review these emails to see whether they're classified as well. Although the FBI cannot yet assess whether this may be significant, and I cannot predict how long it's going to take us to complete this additional work, probably until after the election when Hillary would theoretically win and then come in and cancel it, I believe it's important just to let you know that my testimony was not entirely accurate. There's a lot more other materials out there. He sent that in to the Congress. Now, we read the letter from Richmond, and much of the correspondence between these two, he wants to come in now. He sends the email, hey, come accept me. I want to be the super special assistant to James Comey. Much of the correspondence occurred via his use of a personal email account. In other words, Comey's personal email account, and Richmond was using his Columbia University email. And that's so interesting because remember, John Bolton was also using his personal email account to email himself classified materials. For example, one day after Comey sent the letter to Congress, Richmond, the super special guy, emailed the defendant about the letter. He emailed Comey. He said, hey, Mr. Richmond wrote, Comey, make sure you keep your eyes shut. The country can't seem to handle your finding stuff. Here's what that email looks like in Exhibit 4. Here's the email. Daniel Charles Richmond. Quote, subject, big night? Question mark? From his Columbia.edu. He says to James B. Comey, to JBC. And what's so interesting about this is James Comey's fake email. Reinhold Niebuhr 7 at Gmail. Why are you using fake names, James Comey? And why are you using your personal email with weird names like Reinhold Niebuhr? What is that? So then Daniel Richman, he says, hey, James, are going trick or treating? Question. If so, what are you going as? Make sure you keep your eyes shut. Number 3, the country can't seem to handle your finding stuff. And 4, there are more morons with access to ink than I ever dreamed. Daniel Richman, Columbia Law. Keep your eyes shut. Country apparently can't seem to handle your finding stuff. So he sends the letter to Congress. Congress says, what? We got an election in like a week? And you're now telling us there's more classified documents? So what were you covering up then? Are you covering up now? You're just delaying this stuff so you can kind of have plausible deniability. Well, I did tell you everything, the truth. Like, it was all pertinent. But you are simultaneously like delaying the investigation until after Hillary wins. And are you going trick-or-treating? If so, what are you going as? This relationship is weird. And then Comey says, hey, thanks for the battling you have done against unreason, says James Comey, a.k.a. Reinhold Niebuhr, says this is a strange time, but we press on because he's so heroic. James Comey, Exhibit 4 from the government. Such a heroic, we press on. It's such a fight. What, covering up for Hillary Clinton and being called out on it? Okay, so that's Exhibit 4. Now we continue. Hey, thanks for the battling you have done, Daniel. And no, I'm not dressing up publicly, at least. He says, I'm going to keep that. But what I'm dressing up as, I'm going to keep private. So we press on. Anyways, the next day, Mr. Richman sent the defendant another email regarding an op-ed that he had been asked to write for the New York Times about the letter. Okay, so he sends the letter, then Congress must start talking about it. Then we get the New York Times writing about it. That's Exhibit 5. Let's take a look. Here's another letter from Daniel Richman, Columbia Law professor, over to Reinhold Niebuhr, a.k.a. James Comey. They say, all right, hey, to James, this is Daniel. The New York Times op-ed asked me to write something on your letter. I'm not inclined to do so, but if you think it will help things to explain that you owed Congress absolute candor and that your credibility with Congress will be particularly important in the coming years of threatened congressional investigations, I'll do it. If you want me to write a letter on your behalf explaining it, I'll do it for you. To defend you in the press. He says, Comey, no need. At this point, it would be shouting into the wind. He's like depressed. Sitting at home, listening to depressing music. Someday they will figure it out. And as Jack and Ben pointed out, my decision will be one a President-elect Clinton will be very grateful for, although that wasn't why I did it. Ah, interesting. The election hasn't happened yet. Yeah, this is 10/30/2016. So Comey, I think, is saying, I was going to actually do that to kind of clean out any of this stuff before the election, because Hillary's going to clearly win. And then after the election, I will have eliminated one of her biggest liabilities. Okay, I'll say I got it all out before the election. And we still elected her. So amazing. So we don't have to investigate it. I told you guys everything. Then Hillary can come in, keep James Comey, as we're going to find out. He thought he was going to work for her, and the cover up would be underway. And he could have gotten out the worst of the worst and just kind of settled the issue. So no need. My decision will be one that President-elect Clinton, she didn't win. She hasn't won yet. The election hasn't happened, James. What are you doing saying that? She will be very grateful for it, although that wasn't why I did it. It probably was because you were in cahoots with the Democratic Party to save your own skin and to cover up for them as best you could. Now, we continue. They say Mr. Richman stated he wasn't inclined to write something, but that he would do it if Comey thought it would help things and could explain it on his behalf. Someday they'll figure it out. Now, the defendant also appears, Comey, to have reconsidered that view shortly thereafter. On November 1, 2016, he sent another email, which we'll take a look at. And the investigation is also established officially that James Comey previously used the email Reinhold Niebuhr. Is that a real person? What is that? Reinhold Niebuhr. So then James Comey sends another email, and here's what this one says. From Reinhold Niebuhr, a.k.a. James Comey. Apparently they redacted the email this time, even though it's in all of the other documents, but okay. He says to me, this is going to be over to Richmond. James Comey writes, when I read the Times coverage involving Mike S., I am left with the sense that they don't understand the significance of my having spoke about the case in July. It changes the entire analysis. Perhaps you can make him smarter. Why don't you get out there and write on my behalf? Let's imagine the Times had a policy against writing new articles to the election, and this is on 11/1, it looks like, 11/1/2016, so the election's days away. Let's imagine the Times had a policy against writing new articles close to elections if the articles might influence the election. Consistent with that policy, they would avoid writing this week if sources told them the FBI was looking at Huma Abedin's emails. That was the lady who was married to Anthony Weiner, who worked for Hillary. But let's imagine that they wrote a very high-profile piece in July that sources led them to now conclude was materially inaccurate. Would they correct it, or would they stay silent? Because they have a policy to avoid action near the election. So, in other words, nothing new could come out if it would damage or shake the election, but maybe they could correct the past. He says, Comey, I suspect that they would quickly conclude that either course is an action, and the choices are either reporting or concealing, but there is no longer a neutral option because of the reporting in July. I also suspect they would resolve very quickly to choose the action of disclosing, because to remain silent is to actively mislead, and that has a very wide range of consequences. Now, why is this so hard for them to grasp? All the stuff about how we were allegedly careful not to take actions on cases involving other allegations about which we have never spoken is irrelevant. I love our practice of being inactive near elections, but inactivity was not an option here. The choices were to act to reveal or act to conceal. So Comey probably had a lot of pressure, right? Somebody's like, I'm going to blow the whistle on this. Like, whistleblowers are going to come out. And if Comey doesn't reveal it, then it's going to look like a cover-up. And so he has to come out. And he's trying to save Hillary while doing it. So he's trying to juggle all these balls in the air while he's working with Daniel Richmond. He says, Richmond responds, this is precisely the case I made to them, Jim, and thought they understood. I was quite wrong. Indeed, I went further and I said mindless allegiance to the policy and recognition that more evidence could come in would have counseled silence in July to let Hillary Clinton twist in the wind. Then we have this back from Comey. He says, just got the point home to Mike. Probably was rougher than you would have been, as he's berating Mike. Mike, don't you understand? I had to do it. Screaming at him. And it goes on. So here's the email. Comey sends the email, emails Richmond. We just read it. Perhaps you can make him smarter. Talking about reporter one. And Richmond is saying, yeah, I did it exactly. Why is this so hard for them to grasp, says Comey. These idiot journalists. Don't they know how smart I am? Richmond responded the next day. This is what I was trying to do. I was wrong. Comey then, actually Richmond, that final email was from Richmond. Richmond said, I was rougher than you would have been, in screaming, I guess, at the reporter. Now then, Comey emails Richmond thereafter and entitling the message pretty good. And he sends a link to the New York Times piece about the defendant, Comey, his purported options in late October about the Hillary Clinton email investigation. This is Exhibit 7. Comey sends this one over. From Reinhold Niebuhr, James Comey's fake name so he can cover up his emails to his media leaker so nobody knows who he is. He says, hey, someone showed some logic here. I would paint the cons more darkly, but not bad. Sends him a New York Times email. Says, oh, perfect. Daniel Richman just got done screaming at that journalist because Comey said, will you go shut these idiots up? Why can't they grasp this stuff, morons? Richman says, oh, yeah, I know. Hold on. Let me go scream at him. Then he did. Then the New York Times comes out with another article, and James Comey's like, perfect. Great job. Well done. You beat him into submission. So then they post another update, and they're very sympathetic to James Comey. Says, here, Richman then confirms, see, I can teach. I screamed at them, and now they're writing better articles for you, Jim. And I just did more teaching with Megan Fox and Anderson Cooper. And I wore a jacket this time, says Daniel Richman, the super senior special royal steward of Columbia. He says, see, I can teach. Okay, so he's literally acting as Comey's little hatchet man. And then Comey responds, he says, well done, my friend. Who knew this would be so much fun? So much fun. Yeah, as you're orchestrating your little Columbia law professor to get out there and fight for you. James Comey, having a little fun on this. So he wrote, someone showed some logic. I would paint the cons more darkly. And then, of course, he responds. And the article describes, among other things, if you go over there and read it, it's a 2016 article, Comey's purported options following his letter. They say, notably, one ostensible option was for him to anonymously leak the preliminary findings about the emails before Election Day. The article does not appear to, though, have named Richman as a source of the article. Okay, so Comey's little law professor starts screaming at the media. They write better articles. They say, well done. Well done. Thank you for doing that. Who knew this would be so much fun? Yeah. Now, similarly, Trump wins. In April 2017, he's now in the White House. Comey then came out and emailed Richman, apparently regarding a lengthy article, once again in the New York Times. Richman was a named source in the Clinton mid-year exam that was a cover-up. We've got the email chain here, and let's take a look at Exhibit 8. Here's what we've got, a little bit of a short email chain. This looks like it is from Daniel Richman over to James Comey, a.k.a. Reinhold. Reinhold started it out April 27, 6:19 p.m. Hey, I read the piece. Thanks so much for your words. And tell Mike he did a good job. Maybe the journo. Would be different if I wrote it, but it is by and large fair. Well, James, go write it, okay? Write it with your little novels too. And then Reinhold gets an email back from Richman. He says, oh, you're ever so welcome. And will do Mike. They'll tell him he did a good job. Any badly or underdeveloped points for me to work on with the New Yorker, or just the usual? Taking orders. Anything else you want me to get out there and do PR for you on? That's the email. Now he wrote, yeah, I read the piece. You're ever so welcome. And consistent with this, Richman corresponded extensively with members of the media for or on behalf of James Comey. He also did it in an anonymous capacity. We've got more. For example, in February 2017, Comey's Richman emailed Individual 3, a then government official who had served in high-ranking positions at the FBI and DOJ. Richman sent an email to him, and here's what Exhibit 9 shows. In this series of emails, we've got a handful of them here. We got February 11, 2017, 1642. Yeah. Okay, so let's start down here. And here's what Daniel Richman said originally. He said, Daniel Richman wrote the following. Hi, Chuck. My pal at the New York Times, Mike Schmidt, along with Apuzzo, Goldman, and Gagme Lichtblau, is doing a huge piece on the HRC emails. This is now February 2017. Trump's in the White House. He's had a ton of background conversation with players and non-players like me. Mike very much would like to talk to you exclusively on background as he tries understanding Jim's decision making to the extent possible. Mike asked me to reach out to you, hence this email. Would you be willing to chat with him? Interesting days, huh? Hope I get to see you again soon. Daniel Richman, Columbia. Then we get a response from Daniel. from Chuck Rosenberg over to Daniel Richman. Says, yeah, interesting days I can do. Interesting days I can do without interesting. Yes. And then says, oh, for boring days, unless you just prefer that I give Mike your Gmail, he's at this address at the New York Times or this address over here. So then Chuck Rosenberg responds, I will reach out to him and thank you. Okay, that's Exhibit 9 from the DOJ. And they explain. Hi, individual. He's doing a huge piece. He's had a ton of background conversation with players and non-players like me. Reporter 1 very much would like to talk to you exclusively on background. He's trying to understand the decision-making. Here's his email. Can you reach out to him? Why is he writing about this? Mr. Richman also corresponded now with Reporter 1 via text right after James Comey got fired. Over a period of days beginning on May 11, 2017, they texted each other, and we can read the text directly in Exhibit 10. Here's what they look like, and let's see what we got. Here's a message from Michael Schmidt. Looks like this must be Daniel Richman's iPhone right there. So Michael Schmidt, New York Times, says, I just tried you, hadn't heard your voice in a few hours. I'm about to get on a flight to Chicago for the day. Just wanted to check in and wanted to push you to push JBC. My sense from his text is that he wants this to spill from Comey. Okay, JBC being Comey. Wanted to push you to push Comey. My sense from his text is that he wants this to spill. Now, Daniel Richman's iPhone, this is like Michael Garcia or something, says, okay, you text him and I will reach out too. Just ask for the approximate clearance for me to talk as an anonymous source. What's the approx? Approx date? Okay. When you reach out, tell him that you just need for him to allow you to talk. Work your magic. Which number do you have for him? This is the number. Is that the best one? Believe so. It's raining, see? Here. And so that means Garden can't be on the porch. This is the message I sent him. Hi, I don't want to bother you as I wait to hopefully learn more about this tease. I do think you deserve to be left to catch your breath, but we're at too important a time in the story in the country's history for me to leave you alone. To Jim Comey. I have to try and throw everything I can against the wall. Questions of your unwillingness to give the president your loyalty are already out there. You don't even need to talk to me. Just give Richman the green light to tell me about the dinner. That's all. So you don't have to give me the source. Just pass it through Richman back over to me in the media. Okay, I'm on a flight. I'll be off in 45 minutes. Just got the go ahead. See my email. Okay, give me a shout. Call me. We think they only had dinner once, right? So Trump and Comey. Believe so. Thanks. Here's a picture. What is it? Oh, gosh. A source close to Jim is now telling you that Jim is very much looks forward to giving public testimony before Congress versus closed testimony. Reporter says, hey, give me a quick call. Turn off your phone. What? I'm going to put this in a story and then tweet it out and people may start bothering you. So turn off your phone. Sleep well. Okay, but I'm just as an unnamed associate, right? Night, night. Yes, unnamed associate. Okay, I'm not going to tweet it. An editor at the Times probably will, but people won't pick it up. Different if I tweet it. This won't be a big thing, just a line in the story, covering up for him. KK, call me. Will do shortly. Know why? Just wanted to give you some questions. A few small things, but important. 5 minutes. When you call my desk line at this number. He responds, and he's using it like a fake name. It looks like Michael Garcia. Says Comey told close associates that he had a disturbing conversation with Trump. He's now leaking to the media. In February 14, following a terrorism threat briefing by leaders of the intel community, Trump excused all those present, including the VP and Sessions, asking only Comey to sit there. When the two were alone, facing each other across the Resolute desk, Trump said he wanted to talk about Mike Flynn. He began with a long conversation, condemnation of leaks, but then turned to Flynn, telling Comey, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go by letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Comey replied, I agree, he's a good guy. And they did attack Mike Flynn. Comey immediately created a memo memorializing the conversation that he then used to attack Trump, saying Trump was asking him to politicize an investigation, as he did with all his conversations with Trump, and shared it with his senior staff. They discussed what to do about what could be an effort to obstruct the investigation and decided that because the conversation was one-on-one, it could not be corroborated. So isn't that interesting? Comey, I had a private conversation where the president was trying to interfere with an investigation and only Comey could memorialize it. What a thing. They agreed the best course was to ensure that none of those working the case knew. But in recent days, after Trump himself raised the prospect that he might have taped Comey, the possibility of corroborating the president's words about Flynn has changed. Michael Schmidt, the reporter, says, call me. He says it's up. And some other photographs that they're sharing with each other, as I guess they're talking about their cats on their porches or something. Was that a cat on a porch? It's raining. See? Here, look at my picture. So that means that he can't garden and be on the porch. I don't know what he's talking about. Comey or Trump or I don't know. All right. So anyways, or his cat. Anyway, so that's the email that came out in exhibit number 10 from the DOJ, and it's showing Richmond clearly colluding with the press to write stories and to cover up Richmond's as the source, all on behalf of James Comey, who never leaked anything to the press at all. Yeah. So the document continues. We got those text messages. We just read through those. Then subsection C. Once again, this is the DOJ's response to Comey's attempt to dismiss his charges against himself. They write, all of these memos are also problematic. They write, on May 3rd, while still the FBI director, the defendant testified in an FBI oversight hearing before the Judiciary Committee. He engaged in the following colloquy with Senator Grassley. And I think we have this clip, but we'll read it first. Grassley says, Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, or the Clinton investigation? Never. Question 2, on a relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? No. Lie. Now, again, this is old, right? So that's old. That's outside the statute of limitations here, but we're creating a pattern. And let's see if we've got this exact clip of Chuck and Comey getting into this exchange courtesy of Hodler over there on X.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Yes, you have.
Never.
Lie.
Question 2 on relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
So Comey will say, well, he wasn't exactly at the FBI. He was at a different location. And so technically, he wasn't an FBI special agent. So he didn't, but it's Richmond, right? He's a special government employee, not really officially with the FBI because he's a professor at Columbia. So we'll say, no. He only asked about people at the FBI. That will be his defense. Watch.
Has any classified information relating to President Trump or his associates been declassified and shared with the media?
Not to my knowledge.
You testified before the House Intelligence Committee that a lot of classified matters have ended up in the media recently. Without getting into any particular article, I want to emphasize that, without getting into any particular article, is there an investigation of any leaks of classified information relating to Mr. Trump or his associates?
I don't want to answer that question, Senator, for reasons I think you know. There have been a variety of Leaks, well, leaks are always a problem, but especially in the last 3 to 6 months. And where there is a leak of classified information, the FBI, if it's our information, makes a referral to the Department of Justice, or if it's another agency's information, they do the same, and then DOJ authorizes the opening of an investigation. I don't want to confirm in an open setting whether there are any investigations open.
There were a bunch of them. FBI investigated themselves. We talked about it like 7 times. Remember, they had like all the different interesting names that they created to investigate themselves, and they always found no evidence. Couldn't tie it back to themselves because they're the FBI.
I want to challenge you on that because the government regularly acknowledges when it's investigating classified leaks. You did that in the Valerie Plame case. What's the difference here?
Well, the most important difference is I don't have authorization from the department to confirm any of the investigations they've authorized. And it may be that we can get that at some point, but I'm not going to do it sitting here in an open setting without having talked to them.
Why? You do press conferences without talking to them? All right, so that's the exchange that Halligan is referencing. No, never. And did you authorize someone else at the FBI? He'll say no. He'll say Richmond was not at the FBI, right? That's going to be his defense. Then on May 9th, Leaky Comey was fired. Days later, he sent copies of 4 of 7 memos that he had drafted between January and April 2017, purportedly summarizing one-on-one interactions with President-elect Trump and the president to one of his personal attorneys, Patrick Fitzgerald. Now, Patrick Fitzgerald is this dude who is now representing him. This is his current defense attorney, and back then, Comey was sending him memos about everything that was happening. So essentially, he's a party to the underlying activities. And the question, of course, is how can he represent him when he may have been a witness in the crimes, receiving documents that he should not have been receiving as memos from James Comey, who was just trying to cover for his booty. So then we see that was all chronicled in the OIG report, which we've looked at. Now, the defendant Comey also asked Richmond to share the contents of one of those memos with a reporter at the New York Times. And guess what? He did that. The defendant later, Comey, told the Office of the Inspector General that he didn't consider what he asked Richmond to do privileged, and that he didn't intend to assert any kind of privilege about the direction to Richmond because he wasn't acting as his lawyer. When asked whether he was acting as Comey's attorney or Comey's friend by contacting the reporter, he says, well, Richmond actually responded, told the OIG it was both. And that while one could imagine situations where parsing of that sort was necessary, Richmond never found that those occasions arose. Well, we were friends and I gave him advice as a lawyer. Okay. On June 2017, Comey testified before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and answered a number of questions from senators concerning the creation, handling, and the sharing of those memos. He talked to Senator Susan Collins about this. She said, and finally, Mr. Comey, did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside the DOJ? He said, yes, I did. And to whom did you show those copies? Well, I asked, he said, the president tweeted on Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, said Comey, because it didn't dawn on me originally that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. He's like, oh, crap. And he might be lying. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine, Richmond, to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a friend of mine to do it. Well, who was that? A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School, Daniel Richmond, super special, amazing steward, saying he referred to him as a friend. He wasn't an attorney. He was just a friend he's passing leaking info to. So then in September 2020, we now fast forward a bit before we get there in Ted Cruz. Let's also follow up on these footnotes. They say Comey, he sent copies of 4 memos, the 2nd, 4th, and 6th, as well as a redacted copy of the 7th to Mr. Fitzgerald, his lawyer. Fitzgerald subsequently forwarded them to Richmond, and Mr. Kelly and the defendant also sent Richmond a digital photograph of the fourth memo, okay? So his lawyer now he's just shielding his communications in attorney-client privilege by funneling them through his lawyer, Patrick Fitzgerald, who then pushed them on to Richmond and created this little gap where you can't look into because it's attorney-client conversations. But it was just being passed along. That's the same lawyer who is representing Comey in this case. He's a witness in the underlying disclosure of these memos, and now he's representing James Comey again. He also forwarded Comey's email to another email account belonging to him and saved material sent by Comey to his own computer, his lawyer, right? The guy who's on the case now. The FBI, which determined that the second memo sent by Comey contained classified info, subsequently had to remove or delete the memo from the computer systems of Fitzgerald, Kelly, and Richmond. So they had classified materials on their computers. The defendant never informed the FBI that he had shared memos with them, because it did. The second memo, which they got, the second memo right there was sent to these people. The defendant never informed the FBI that he sent classified documents to them. Instead, the FBI first learned that information from Richmond. So his lawyer was saving and passing along classified documents. Wonder if they'll raid his house. Comey says, and we read that from Collins. Collins said, who was it? Oh, yeah, it was Daniel Richmond. Then we fast forward. Now we get to September 2020, and we just had charges against Comey September 2025, 5 years later. And we were just one little hair away from losing the ability to charge him if the clock would have struck September 25th. Now, or 30 or whatever it was. He says, in September, Comey again testified, hauled in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and engaged in the following colloquy by Senator Cruz. And he's referencing the testimony that he gave to Grassley back in 2017. And here is what that exchange sounded like. I believe we got Ted Cruz right here, getting into it with James Comey, courtesy of Svetlana Lakova, who shared this clip for us over from Congress back in 2020.
To another topic. On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no.
Yes, he did.
Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
All right, I'm going to make a final point because my time has expired. This investigation of the president was corrupt. The FBI and the Department of Justice were politicized and weaponized.
True.
And in my opinion, there are only two possibilities. That you were deliberately corrupt or woefully incompetent. And I don't believe you were incompetent. This has done severe damage to the professionals and the honorable men and women at the FBI because law enforcement should not be used as a political weapon. And that is
Ted Cruz and legs in the chat, as we see from this still. But that was Ted, and they brought that back out. They said, you stand by it? And Comey said in response, I can only stand by the testimony that I gave to Grassley, which was fraudulent. The OIG provided its findings, and of course, the DOJ declined to prosecute James. So Cruz said, so your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak? And Mr. McCabe, if he says the contrary, is not telling the truth, is that correct? Comey. Again, I'm not going to characterize his testimony, but mine is the same. Not true. Your testimony might be the same, but it's also a lie. So shortly after Comey was fired, Trump began to publicly express his concern that Comey had leaked or authorized the leak of investigative information and gave false or misleading testimony to cover it up. For example, on May 31, 17, he referenced the false or misleading testimony of Comey. Trump said, Comey is a leaker. 2 days later, he said, I believe the James Comey's leaks will be far more prevalent than anyone ever thought possible. Totally illegal? ? From Trump. In July, he also reposted a news report stating, report accuses material James Comey leaked to a friend contained top secret information. Didn't raid his house. In October 17, he posted, Trump, James Comey lied and leaked and totally protected Hillary Clinton. In March 2018, Trump said, wow, watch Comey lie under oath to Senator Grassley when asked, have you ever been an anonymous source? Of course he was. Or known anyone else to be an anonymous source? Of course he did. He said strongly, never know. Trump said he lied as shown clearly on Fox and Friends. Now, the transcript attached to the defendant's motion when Comey submitted this non-substantively corrects Cruz's questions and Comey's answer. The transcript also erroneously adds the word that to Cruz's final question and omits the word is from the same question. Wow. So Comey's even in his motions attaching fraudulent transcripts. What a piece of something. The president continued to express his sentiment throughout his entire first term, rightfully. September 2018, Trump quoted a law professor who said, you know who's at fault for this more than anyone else? Comey, because he leaked information and laundered it through a professor at Columbia. Shame on that professor and shame on Comey as they're talking about their Halloween costumes. Comey has cited no comments about him from Trump between December 2020 and August 2022. And over the course of his 24 campaign, Trump continued to post references to his conduct as FBI director, including his handling of the Hillary cover-up and the OIG investigation results. But he also posted about Trump too. Now, on Comey's part, his motion shows his first social media post speaking about the Trump administration, not the president directly, came in June 2017, over a month after he was fired and after Trump had publicly posted about his false testimony. There is no evidence of Comey criticizing the president himself up until 2018, when Comey came out and called Trump morally unfit to be the president. At that point, the president had clearly and repeatedly maintained that Comey was a leaker. Now, Comey opined that the president should not be reelected sporadically through 2018. He did so more in the lead up to the 2020 election. In 21, Comey called President Trump a menace and a very bad person in a flurry of posts. He then advocated against reelecting Trump fewer than 10 times between May 23 and 24. Then Trump wins. So James Comey couldn't 86-47 the campaign. But then in the spring of 2025, not long ago, a team of FBI investigators was assembled to examine possible reform policies and culture at the FBI. Trump's now in charge. During their work, FBI investigators were alerted to a seemingly unused skiff in FBI headquarters, room 9582, down the long, creepy corridor back there, containing a random collection of classified documents. You're kidding. A large majority of the documents were on the floor in 5 burn bags to be destroyed, never to be found again. Room 9582 was then subject to an inventory for the documents that were located inside the burn bags. Investigators located hundreds of pages relating to Crossfire Hurricane, the 2016 FBI investigation that was trying to make up ties between Trump and Russia. They also found the then classified appendix to the Durham Special Counsel report, which is now partially declassified, and additionally, Inside a locked safe in the room, 9582, investigators located copies of handwritten notes of James Comey when he was the director of the FBI. Boom! Now, the handwritten notes were not known to any in prior investigative teams. New notes from James Comey's pen. So the new FBI team reviewed access logs to the room. 9582. Who was in and out of there? The access logs showed an extended period of dormancy where room 9582 was rarely, if ever, accessed. And by the way, they didn't need this to be hidden forever. They just needed it to be hidden until the statute of limitations expired, such that they could not be charged again. So it's like, okay, just throw them in the room. Nobody ever goes in there. It stinks in there. There's mold all over the place. People get in there for whatever. And so just leave it out of sight, out of mind. Statute of limitations expires, and now doesn't matter. Have all the documents in the world. You can't charge them. Then in late December of 2024, access to the room began to pick up. There was a spike of activity. Look at what time, occurring over the inauguration weekend, January 19th to the 22nd, 2025. Trump is coming in. They are freaking out, running all over the place. And I don't know why they didn't destroy the materials. Like, why are they sitting in burn bags in there? Why didn't they just burn them or shred them or destroy them? Maybe they'll explain it, but it was removed from the main thoroughfare of the FBI. The government recognizes that Comey and Trump likely made social media statements aside from these posts, but Comey bears the burden of showing it's vindictive or selective, and he hasn't done that yet, referencing Trump's post. Now, the discovery of the handwritten notes is relevant, considering Comey's prior testimony. He said back on September 30th of 2020 a bunch of things. During that hearing, Comey was questioned by Senator Graham of South Carolina and Senator Hawley of Missouri. The questions focused on whether Comey remembered, quote, being taught of U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning President Trump, or candidate Trump at the time, and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from Hillary's email server. Comey's asked questions. He responds. He says, that doesn't ring any bells with me, and I don't know what that refers to. I don't remember receiving anything that is described in that letter. Now, despite this testimony, Comey's handwritten notes dated September 26, 2016, read HRC Plan to Tie Trump. Right there. Government exhibit number 13. And here it is. Dated 9/26/2016. Comey writing a memo from the director and on his little notepad. And you'll notice this here, Mitch. And Mitch is scribbled out. And there's some conversations, maybe the motion will have it, that Mitch is a code name for somebody else called Stephen Halper, also involved in Crossfire Hurricane. So JB says, we have CID, unser HRC, something within the system. Here you see HRC Plan to Tie Trump and HRC Health, right? Because remember, she collapsed on 9/11 and she had to be thrown into that van like she was a side of beef, just like, get in there. Then they had that body double or whoever that was come out and she's like, oh no, it's me, Hillary. I'm doing great. Hi, everybody. And we heard all the metal clanking and I don't know what was going on. Weird. So then we saw Kerry, Trump something, debts to Moscow, Trump finances, debts to Moscow, just all making it up. JB says journalists are too, something here, Trump. I mentioned the New York Times and Russia and infusions, databases, state voter databases, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so those are Comey's handwritten notes. So he knows this was all Hillary's plan to try to attack and smear Trump. DOJ got his handwritten notes. He may not have been expecting that. So they say, boop, got it right there. So he knew about it. And when he was asked questions about this, do you remember that Hillary approved a plan to try to smear Trump and Russia? It doesn't ring any bells with me, says Comey. And I don't know what that refers to. Yeah, you do. You wrote it in your notes. Jim? On August 13th, the president, Trump, posted a link to a Fox News segment with the text that says, documents reveal James Comey, associate, linked and leaked classified information to the New York Times not long ago, a few months ago. The next day, Trump also posted a link to a news article. The article detailed FBI documents that were recently disclosed to Congress that indicated that Daniel Richman, the law professor, had admitted, he said, quote, he was given access by Comey to what turned out to be highly classified information up to the SCI level, and sometimes he provided that information to reporters on an anonymous basis. That's over from John Solomon. The president posted this too. This was an epic post from Trump. Remember this? He said, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially, same old story as last time. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey? What about Adam Shifty Schiff? Letitia? Question. They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who is never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him. And there was a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. Exclamation. Now, the same day, Trump announced his intention to nominate Halligan to the Eastern District. To lead the office in the interim, the AG designated Lindsay Halligan to serve as the U.S. attorney. On September 25th, in response to a reporter's questions about an indictment of Comey, Trump said, well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know yet. Very unprofessional people headed up by the Attorney General, very professional people, including Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Lindsay Halligan, they're going to make that determination, okay? I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I really don't really choose to do so, said Trump. Later that day, boom, grand jury came out, 2 counts, 1 obstruction, 1 lying to Congress for the September testimony, which was fraudulent. So here's the argument they say, we're going to win this. It's not selective. It's not vindictive at all. There's plenty of evidence, even his handwritten notes. The president, they explain, has a responsibility under the Constitution to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. U.S. attorneys have to do that. And in this case, we appointed a U.S. attorney. Now, the societal interests in this prosecution are readily apparent and overwhelming. In this case, the defendant, Comey, is a former FBI director. He lied to Congress about his conduct while at the helm of the nation's primary federal law enforcement agency. His prosecution implicates societal interest of the highest order. Nonetheless, Comey comes now and asks this court to dismiss this case because he says he's being vindictively and selectively prosecuted. Now, given the deep-seated separation of powers principles here, his request can only be granted if he meets the high standard, meaning the Constitution literally requires it. Judicial intervention should not deny the American people the benefits of justice. And if you want to win this case, Comey, you must carry a heavy burden. You must show that his, quote, prosecution could not be justified as a proper exercise of discretion. He has to prove that there was genuine animus towards him. That requires direct evidence of a vindictive motive. He also has to show the prosecutor, in this case Halligan, is doing this solely to punish him for exercising a protected right. And there's no evidence of a crime. You're just punishing. We got plenty of evidence because there are great costs to requiring the government to produce discovery related to this. He has to overcome a significant barrier. And he argues that evidence that's already on the record satisfies this, but it doesn't. Not so. Comey's evidence is a mix of news reports and social media posts and speculation. It's not evidence at all. And it certainly isn't the direct evidence that is needed. And it also fails to show that the prosecution was brought solely to punish him in any way. He hasn't carried his burden. There is no direct evidence. And that's why he's going to lose this. Now, he must first produce direct evidence of a vindictive motive. But he hasn't done that at all. Here, that prosecutor who's leading this is the U.S. attorney. He hasn't shown that Lindsay Halligan harbors any animus toward him at all. Instead, Comey says that he doesn't need any evidence because his claims turns on animus harbored by the official who prompted the prosecution, which is Trump. So if he can show that Trump has animus, then that can spread over to Lindsay Halligan. But as they were clear about earlier, Trump was explaining, I didn't have any role in the decision-making process. As discussed below, the president doesn't harbor vindictive animus against him. Before reaching that issue, however, the court should determine whether he has presented enough evidence to rebut this. His argument relies on an imputed animus theory, okay? It's going from Trump to Lindsay. The Fourth Circuit, we've never adopted that theory here. And we're not going to start. When courts have entertained this, they have required a significant evidentiary showing because it's the prosecutor who ultimately brings the charges, referencing some other cases in Wilson and elsewhere, and another case with an escape charge. They say the same. It's the same here as the prior cases. The idea that she failed to act independently is pure speculation. There's no evidence of that. And yeah, Trump might be the ultimate supervisor, but you have to have evidence that he was influencing this in some way, shape, or form. And you have not presented sufficient evidence that that has happened. Now, should the court decide that it needs to consider the president's animus, all they're relying on is social media posts. And vindictiveness has specific meaning. It's not that Trump doesn't like him. The president's social media posts are clear on why he thinks he should be prosecuted. He says he's guilty. He thinks he's guilty. So justice would require he be prosecuted and found guilty. It's not that he just doesn't like them and he's like Letitia James or Fannie and trying to take out a bunch of people. He thinks he's guilty. It's not vindictive at all. Vindictiveness is a precise word. It doesn't refer to personal spite or ill will. It's much deeper than that. It refers to something narrower. It's a prosecution whose objective is to penalize a person's reliance on his legal rights. Okay, you're being abused, not being lawfully prosecuted. If everybody who is lawfully prosecuted being attacked vindictively, every case would go through this, and they don't. Comey is grasping. Now, a vindictive prosecution must be grounded to some right, and lots of kind of law here explaining how the statutes work. But Trump's posts create a years-long record of legitimate prosecutorial motives. He's not trying to attack his rights for exercising his rights. He's trying to get justice based on his violation of other rights, based on his criminality. That's not vindictiveness. They say specifically, he leaked information. He laundered it through Richmond. Trump said he's guilty as hell. That's actual just prosecution. And in some, Comey doesn't even say that Lindsay Halligan harbored any genuine animus towards him. He can't prove that. Now, even if the court does find that there is genuine animus, you should still hold that he is not being vindictively prosecuted because it's not brought based on his First Amendment rights. There's no causation there to show that we're coming after him because of what he's saying. He says, I'm only being prosecuted because I'm a vocal critic of Trump. But in fact, by that point, they say, according to his own version of events, this all started back on June 8th. But by that point, the president had already accused him of committing a crime. So when someone's accusing you of committing a crime, that doesn't mean that they're vindictive. They just want justice to be done, which is what we would expect of our society. But even if Comey's exercise of a protected right, his free speech, had preceded the accusation, in other words, Trump was saying he should be prosecuted before Comey started talking garbage. So the causation is inverted. If Comey would have started talking garbage and then Trump said prosecute him, they'd say, well, maybe the causation is that Comey was running his mouth, and so Trump needed to hit him back with a criminal charge. But that they say the inverse of that is true. Here, Trump's social media post created a real-time record of a legitimate prosecutorial motive. It's not vindictive at all. So he bears the burden of proving this, and he hasn't done it. The decision to prosecute is presumed to be motivated by proper considerations. You have a presumption of regularity. And there is no discriminatory purpose that has been presented by Comey. He says that Trump's posts are admissions, but that requires multiple inferential leaps that you can't get to. And you must accept all of those leaps to get there if you want to. Now, Comey spins a tale. It requires leaps of logic and a big dose of cynicism. There is no direct admission of any discriminatory purpose for these charges. To the contrary, the only direct admission from the president is that officials decided whether to prosecute him, not Trump. They made the decision, not the president. And so he has not produced the clear evidence that is required for dismissing this indictment. He's not even made a credible showing on any of this at all. He's not only not identified similar individuals to show that he's being singled out, he's presented none. So without any clear evidence, he's not carried his burden to have his charges dismissed. He identifies 4 individuals who he says are identical, but these 4 are not identical. None of them is alleged to have lied to Congress while serving as the head of an executive branch agency. He says, well, Jeff Sessions also misled Congress. And he says Scott Pruitt also made false statements, and Tom Price and others. But these 4 people allegedly made misleading statements during their confirmation hearings. He made knowingly false statements about his official conduct, not at confirmation, and he obstructed the congressional oversight of the FBI's actions. They're not similar at all to those other people. And there is a history of prosecuting these liars. In fact, we have this one here after the Watergate scandal, Secretary of Defense charged with obstruction, CIA Deputy Director Claire George, and others. So it's hardly surprising that the executive would prioritize prosecution of agency officials versus these other people. It's standard. We do it all the time. And Comey has not presented any evidence that he's being treated any differently. And moreover, no discriminatory intent has ever been shown. They say he is saying that Trump is attacking them, and he identifies his political activity. He says, well, you can just look at Trump's social media posts and come to the conclusion that Trump is trying to attack him. But other cases say we deserve a presumption of regularity here, and there is no evidence from Comey actually stating that he's being prosecuted because of personal animus. There's no objective evidence of any discriminatory intent. He cites cases that are bad case law, and they say he's asking you to follow the wrong standard. His extraordinary conduct, writes Trump's DOJ, and the level of public distrust that he betrayed by lying to Congress are manifestly the reasons for the prosecution. The executive cannot be expected to ignore agency heads lying about their official actions, and Comey, exercising his First Amendment rights, doesn't give him the ability to lie to Congress. Given his flagrant violation of the public trust, there's every reason to believe that he would be prosecuted for violating the law, not criticizing the president. And so his claims fall way short of all of the precedent that has been established, and this case should not be dismissed. He has not met the burden, and he says dismissal would be an affront to the integrity of the justice system. But the true affront to our justice system would be to allow Comey to escape accountability for lying and obstructing the Congress while serving as the director of the FBI. The indictment was presented by a duly appointed and unbiased prosecutor. Shout out to Lindsay Halligan. A duly constituted grand jury found probable cause. If you dismiss this, that will be an affront to justice. This prosecution is not vindictive or selective at all, and James Comey's request should be denied. Signed here by N. Tyler Lemons from the Lindsay Halligan team over there, Eastern District of Virginia, and some good, juicy nuggets inside. Here is more. This is from the Lindsey Graham. This is the final exhibit that was a part of all of this. But Lindsey Graham was, of course, referenced. We kind of fast forwarded through that, but I did have the exchange queued up. Here is Lindsey Graham also getting into it with James Comey just to buttress the case of his lies.
People behind this hated Trump, and the reason they ran all these stop signs, they didn't want to take no for an answer. So do you recall getting an inquiry from the the intelligence community in September 2016 about a concern that the Clinton campaign was going to create a scandal regarding Trump and Russia?
I do not.
You don't remember getting a investigatory lead from the intelligence community? Hang on a second. Let me find my document here. September the 7th, 2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught? That doesn't
ring bells with me.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you. Let's just end with this. You get this inquiry from the Intelligence Committee to look at the Clinton campaign basically trying to create a distraction, accusing Trump of being a Russian agent or a Russian stooge or whatever to distract from her email server problems. And how far-fetched is that, Mr. Comey, when we now know that the Democratic Party, through Fusion GPS, hired Christopher Steele, a foreign agent who had a very strong bias against Trump, who hired a Russian subsource who the FBI believed to be a Russian spy to compile a dossier that was a bunch of crap to be used against an American citizen working for the Trump campaign. You already knew that. Seems to me you'd want to investigate other allegations, but you're telling me that you don't recall this.
I'm sorry, Senator, is there a question?
Yes, you don't recall this inquiry I just read about September the 2016.
Comey just sitting there lying through his teeth. He knows exactly what he did. It's in his handwritten notes right here. Hillary Clinton plan to tie Trump up back on September 26, 2016. That plan made its way into the ICA from Obama, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and all of them. And they knew it the whole time. And they still smeared Trump in the aftermath. And so Trump is spitting madman, as he should be. Great clip here from Trump's interview over with 60 Minutes. And here is the president absolutely unloading.
Go after him automatically. But they instructed them to go after me because the records now have been found. So when you tell me about, I went after Comey's low in the totem pole. They went after the president of the United States. Do you know that they raided my house in Palm Beach, Florida, called Mar-a-Lago? They raided my house. I had 78 or 98 FBI agents with arms.
I know how
come into my house, and you're telling me, Nora, that I went after some lowlife named Comey, who's adjudged to be a crooked guy. He lied all over the place. He lied to Congress and did many other bad things.
Well, I was just asking.
For that, you should be ashamed.
No, I was just asking, is this retribution on your part?
No, it's the opposite. I think I've been very mild-mannered. You're looking at a man who was indicted many times, and I had to beat the rap. Otherwise, I couldn't have run for president. They tried to get me not to run for president by going after me and by indicting me. But even during my term, on a perfect phone call, I got impeached. This call was perfect. Tim Scott from South Carolina, highly respected, a legitimate person, totally legit. He read the thank goodness we had a transcript of the call. The call I got indicted on, a call on Ukraine of all places with the president of Ukraine. It was a perfect phone call. Tim Scott said, I just read the transcript. The president didn't do anything wrong. It was perfect. And that was the end of the indictment pretty much. But I had to go through a whole process. You know, the Democrats knew that I wasn't guilty because they didn't know the call was, I didn't know either. The call was essentially taped. So we knew exactly what the call. When they found out that the call was taped, Nancy Pelosi went crazy. They said, "You made me go into this mess." She screamed at all these people that made her do it, bad people like Schiff, et cetera, et cetera. So what happened is she went nuts. And just to conclude, and they said, let's do it anyway. They did it anyway, and I won very easily, as you know. But you can't then accuse me of weaponizing government. They were horrible human beings. They went after the President of the United States. They went after my children. They went into my wife's drawers. They went into my wife's closets. They held the dresses up. She came back. She said, "Oh, what happened? What happened?" Because she's a very meticulous person. Everything's nice and neat. All of a sudden, everything's like, they went into my office. They took things that I was allowed to have filed under the Presidential Records Act, that I was allowed to have. I had records. I was allowed to have them. Only the president's allowed, but I was, and there was nothing very significant anyway. There was like nothing. Wait, just 1 second. They opened these. I'm a very meticulous person too. I have files, beautiful. They took the files, threw them all over the phone, all over the floor. They were all over the floor. And they took pictures of them. This is my office. I said, what the hell? That's not my office. They took files. They threw them all over. And they took pictures and they released them to the public that this is President Trump's office. We caught him with all of this stuff like it was all over the floor of my office. These are crooked people. These are dissent. So don't ask me about, did you go after Letitia James, in my opinion, and I only say in my opinion because I guess the lawyers would prefer that I say that because I have a much stronger opinion. She's a total crook. She's a lowlife. Comey's a dirty cop. Bolton actually helped me a lot because he was crazy. He's the one, him and Cheney, a couple of people got Bush to go out and blow the hell out of the Middle East and then then leave. And actually Bolton helped me because every time somebody saw Bolton standing behind me, foreign countries, they conceded. You know why they conceded? Because they said, Bolton's a nut job. Trump is going to take us to war. But I don't listen to people that are stupid.
And every single person involved in that, listening to the president walk us through them going through Melania's bedroom and her closet and going through her drawers should make anybody who's, got a pulse fuming mad, because it was a raid that was approved by the deep state, by the same hacks that were responsible for trying to smear Trump with Russia, creating fake reports that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, ODNI, all of them, then adopted and called it intelligence and lied to us right through their teeth for years. And now it's all coming out. Comey's handwritten notes are there. And boy, he probably was hopeful that somebody would ultimately torch those burn bags, but that did not happen. And the president, man, you can see how attuned he is to what actually happened to him and his family. And we want serious repercussions for everybody involved. We're off to a start. We've got Comey, we've got Letitia, we've got Bolton, but there are many more dominoes that need to fall. And we're going to be here to keep our eye on this one. So lots of coverage on the Comey response from the DOJ, juicy nuggets in there, in particular, all of the emails where Comey is literally directing. He's like telling Richmond how to drive the bus. Do this, do that, do that. Richmond was doing it, sent classified materials to his lawyers. Lawyers passed it along. Same lawyer who is representing him now, and wrote in handwriting, yeah, it was a Hillary Clinton plan on his notes that were discovered in burn bags, 5 of them, tucked away in a closet somewhere in a skiff at the FBI. Disgusting deep state affairs now being exposed. We're going to keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends, what a beautiful day it is here today. So now it's time to hear from you. Of course, lots of Comey coverage. We made it through 50 pages or so of a very juicy response from the DOJ and 14 exhibits, all chronicling Comey's criminality. Chronicling Comey's criminality. All right, not bad. All right, so let's see who's here, and let's see what you have to say about all of this and more. Very glad to have you. If you're a membo, stick around. We'll debrief a little bit more after the show is over. We got a bunch of new membos coming in. We got some good ones. Hey, Congress is closed. Sorry, we're closed. From Donut Miami. Good to see you. It is closed, and I'm not too upset about it. Spuds is here. Rob, when his underlining pen goes awry. Yeah, sometimes I get a little bit carried away. It just starts flowing out. The ink, like the salmon in the hills of Capistrano. We got what's up live. Hey, Dark Rogue. 20 membos coming in from Dark Rogue. What's up, Dark Rogue? Thanks for doing it. What's going on? Beautifully Inappropriate. You're here. Kim Rudder. What's up, Benny Truth? Samantha Wagner. We got Knowledge Tracker. Barb Loves Alaska's here. Silicon-ish in the house. John Seuss. J. King. Tony Otto. Chris L. What's up, Salty C? Pyramid 7. Preeta's here. Johnny Girl. We got Peggy Holsclaw. Dave Perfman. Chris Groner. TJ Elliott, and Jaman Rooney in the house. Welcome aboard, new friends. See you in the after party. Can't wait to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Michelle P., what's going on? 19 months as a membo. On our second baby, Rob. Congrats to you and Mrs. G. Thank you, Michelle. So I'm not a math scholar, but I think we're on our third if we're 19 months, right? Because 9 and 9 is 18, I think. Got to get a calculator. So I think we're actually on our third. We got 2 full ones and 1 in the oven, Michelle. Thanks for being here for 19 months. You're amazing. Ms. J, what's going on, Ms. J? See you in the after party. Grab the members only stream from this morning, too. We talk some election stuff. And how New York's going to have a communist here. Well, what's going on over here? Yeah, tomorrow, tariff case, the Supreme Court case. Trump posted this. Tomorrow's Supreme Court case is literally life or death for our country. It's happening tomorrow early, I think 9:30 Eastern. I think is the time. Don't quote me on that. With a victory, we have tremendous but fair financial and national security. Without it, we are virtually defenseless against other countries who have for years taken advantage of us. Our stock market is consistently hitting record highs, and our country has never been more respected than it is right now. A big part of this is the economic security created by the tariffs and the deals that we have negotiated because of them. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yeah, and I think can't Trump also make the argument, I haven't seen a lot of it from them yet, but that the tariffs are a policy of, global security, like infrastructure security, because they're stopping wars, right? Trump has said many times that he'll just say, if you guys don't settle this, you're both getting tariffed and it's going to be a problem for you. And they settle it. The Rubos are here saying a prayer for tomorrow. Rubos have the best prayers and salt. Prayer for the salvation of our nation. May God's kingdom come and his will be done in tomorrow's November 4th, 2025, United States Supreme Court case. Father, bless the Supreme Court justices with wisdom, righteousness, strength to do what is right with discernment. Bless them and our nation with peace. In Jesus' miracle working name, we pray. Amen. Thank you to the Rubos for that, man. Good prayers. Charles Argo. Happy New Year to you too. Means there is a prior email. Oh, yeah, that's a good comment from Charles from South Africa. That's the Rand, the Tsar. Thank you for the context, Donut. I know that one's come up a bunch and I still can't remember it. So thanks for helping out. Happy New Year. Thanks for watching over from South Africa. How cool is that? Good to have you here, Charles. Thank you. Thank you for the dono. Run Mead. What is the impact of an attorney leaking attorney-client info to the press on that information as attorney-client privilege in a subsequent trial? Well, so for that specific information, you could deem the privilege to have been breached. So like whatever that was being communicated, if you have a third party, like attorney-client privilege is for the attorney and the client. You don't then get to share that information and then continue to maintain that privilege if that evidence is being used against you. So that depending on what you're talking about, that would be waived. You would waive the privilege, and then that material can now is basically now fair game. So that's sort of what we're asking is there a conflict of interest if Patrick Fitzgerald, the attorney, was in the chain of custody of transmitting these classified documents? Now, he's not being charged with disseminating or retaining classified info. So like that's not a crime that's being charged because a lot of that was earlier, but still ethically feels like it's a little bit of a conflict if the defense attorney is also maybe a witness in the predicate facts that led to the obstruction and the lying to Congress. Anyways, good question. Thank you, Runmead. Hey, Knowles is here. Knowles, 4 zeros. says lock her up. And I don't know if Comey is identifying as a her now, but might as well. But anyways, he definitely should be locked up, and maybe he will be. Thank you, Knowles. Thanks for being here for 5 months as a membo. Over halfway there. Thank you, Knowles. King of Biltong. Man, look at that nice meat right there. Did you know that King of Biltong also specializes in imported foods and candies? Check out Biltong USA for a great selection of imported food and, of course, a Biltong. BiltongUSA.com. Code Robert will save you 10% off, and you'll enjoy your delivery. Oni, what's up, Oni? 15 months as a membo. That's Charlie Kirk, baby. What's up, Charlie? May you rest in peace. Oni, thanks for being here for 15 months as a membo and for shouting out Charlie. We miss him. Jesser Bob, what's up? I would love to buy a drink for the person who hid those burn bags full of corruption. I wouldn't say that it was Big Balls, but he's too young to be the guy. LOL. I would say maybe it was Big Balls. Anyways, Jesser Bob, yeah. It's weird. How come they didn't burn him? It's like, we can't burn it. It's like the FBI building. Like, they're going to know if we set these things off. So just put him in here along with all of the other stuff. Okay, all the other trash, like your Twinkie wrappers, like everything else. Like, just put it in there. And then they found it. And again, I think that the ultimate end game is you don't need to destroy it. You just have to kind of let the clock expire, and then you're good. And they were very close to that. Like within days. Ray K. Oh my gosh. 45 months as a membo. Ray K. How many babies is that? Need a spreadsheet. Gosh. Do the newlyweds want to adopt some babies? I got 5. 5 of them. Is that 5 today? Man, that's amazing. Ray K, thanks for being here for so long, man. And thanks for sticking around. You know, it's like that's super impressive because even like the credit cards change, you know, even if like you want to be a member, like your card changes and like, oh, dang it, I expired. So that's amazing. Thank you, Ray K. Really glad to have you here, man. We've been through some serious stuff together. Holy moly. FD, man. Friggin' Democrats need to vote to open the friggin' government. Democrats are murderers. Yeah, in many contexts, that's true. Every drop of blood is on their hands. They are satanic. It's all true. All of that's factually true. Hey, Chris, what's up, Chris? Chris Solitary 1. Good to see you, Chris. Yeah, long time no see. It has been a while. Glad to catch your show for once. Chris Solitary 1. You rock, Rob. Good to see you again, Chris. I remember. Yeah, I remember. Thanks for saying what's up. Thanks for the dono. Glad you made it back. Hopefully your hiatus is over and you're here every day now moving forward. Mr. Magic Man, how do we know Trump is not a king? Comey is still around, yeah. And yeah, it's so interesting that if you're a king, you would allow other people to protest you being a king. Although the No Kings protest in England, where they actually have a king, they called it the No Tyrants protest. So, you know, the labels are very fluid for them, like most things. This old guy, what's up? Yeah, livid is a great word to describe President Trump about the despicable way Comey tried to undermine the administration. It makes my blood boil. Okay, like thinking about, look, I'm a criminal defense attorney. So anytime cops do a raid, you know, you have to ask yourself, you know, why. And many times they've got good reasons for it. Like, you know, exigent circumstances, or they got a warrant or something. And there's a justification for the warrant. This was all a total scam. Bruce Reinhart was like an Epstein liaison with Epstein back when he was approving the warrant, and they raided the president. They gave them lethal force options. They treated him like just a common criminal. Raided Melania, raided Barron. And I'm just thinking now as a husband, like, oh my gosh, if these pieces of garbage came in and went through my wife's stuff, you know, how it's like, oh my gosh, I'd be so mad, so fuming mad, especially, right, you know, if they went in there and they're like, well, you got a lot of methamphetamines in here. I'd be like, honey, what are you doing with all this meth? But she's not Hunter Biden, you know, so that wouldn't happen. And it didn't happen with Melania. They just went through her closet just to cause pain and humiliation. Okay. It was a humiliation ritual, and it makes me fume, which is why they should all be in jail. And it seems like the president is pretty angry about it too, which we're happy to see. Hey, Sassy Gemini, is it too much of a jaded stretch for me to at least consider there was something dirty and nefarious about the cargo plane crash in Louisville? That's a great question, Sassy Gemini. Probably not too much of a jaded stretch, but I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing here. But I don't know what happened. So hopefully nobody died, but maybe they did. Cartier, when you said the name of Comey's attorney, I thought you were joking. Patrick Fitzgerald is half of that proverbial gay Irish duo, Gerald Fitzpatrick and Patrick Fitzgerald. Yeah, no, I think somebody mentioned that before, and it's like I guess it's an old Irish joke or something. Two gay men open up a law firm. It's called Gerald Fitzpatrick and Patrick Fitzgerald, attorneys at law. Yeah, it's pretty funny. That's his name. Yeah, that's his name. And apparently he was also transmitting classified materials on behalf of James Comey. So not ideal. Anyways, my friends, thank you so much for the donos, for the comments. Welcome new membos. I see John Bright just came up as a supporter. Welcome aboard. And as a member, we'll see you in a minute. We're going to have an after party. We'll debrief. We'll see what else you guys have to say about this. Take some locals comments and say what's up. Hey, FD man, remember the 5th of November, there was planned protest in D.C. to make Trump or remove Trump from office, same day as SCOTUS tariff beware. All right, so it doesn't have the same cadence as the other poem. But yeah, 5th of November, that's tomorrow. That's going to be the tariff day. Gunpowder, powder, tariffs, and plot. John Bright. What's up, John? We'll see you in a minute. Thank you for signing up. We're going to debrief for a little bit. Members only time, baby. Hopefully we see you there. Let's also say hello to some friends on X and see who's joining us over there on the day before we wrap it up. Here are a couple of comments. Neuro D, thank you for sharing the Rumble link. Of course, we're also over on Rumble. Shout out to our Rumble friends. Guernica. Yeah, here you go. Another senior Democratic aide said, as long as public perception is on their side, the party will not concede short of planes falling out of the sky. We're fine with that. They can continue to shut the government down. No problem. TJ King. NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers was one of the few heroes in the Obama admin, says TJ King. He discovered and pulled the plug on the first FISA spying program and literally snuck over to Trump Tower to alert Trump he was being spied on. This set off Obama admin calls for his firing. And we read, TJ, his email to Clapper yesterday on the show. And he said, hey, Clapper, you can't ask us to sign off on this if we haven't properly looked at the materials. And Clapper responded and said, just shut up and get on board. This is a team sport. So I don't want to hear it. And then they moved forward with it. They gave it to Obama and the whole thing was rigged. Hey, Sean, the artist formerly known as John Cusack. Hey, congrats, married man. Does it feel different? It does feel different. Yeah, it does feel different. Feels like a beautiful sunflower shining in glory or something. Yeah, it does. It feels different. It feels like I'm a married man when before I wasn't. I can't be very articulate about it, but it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. I'm enjoying it. So thank you for asking about that, my friends. We're going over. It's members only time. And yeah, FD man, November 5th, 1605 was the gunpowder plot to overthrow King James I. Yeah, I saw that movie, V for Vendetta. Good film. Sean, thank you for that one. Thanks for being a member for 5 months. You're amazing. Yeah, and apparently an airplane went down. That happened. Yeah, hadn't even heard about it. But anyways, all right, so thank you for that, my friends. We're going over members only after party time. Hopefully we see you there and you join us. But if not, we're coming back tomorrow. Before we wrap it up, big shout outs and thanks to our mods and meme smiths. Donut Mind Me, John in the house. We got K-Bean, Carrie B, of course, Muffin Rando now joining us. We've got Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, our friends G-Gum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda, all modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly. So come over and join us for the members only after party. We're going to debrief for a bit, see what else you have to say about this day. And then, of course, we're coming back tomorrow to get into this all again. It's going to be beautiful. And in order to do this appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care.